It's an exhausting life to have to continually monitor your life and wonder, is that person going to become a flying monkey? Is that person going to become a flying monkey? It's no way to live. In some ways, all you can do is go through your life as your best you. And if the people around you don't seem to understand narcissism, be careful around them. This particular episode takes on 6 alternatives to calling out the narcissist, because if you're not going to call them out, you need an alternative. So this short series takes on what happens when you call out the narcissist, the reasons people do it, and in this last piece, some alternatives to doing it. Now listen, I've said it over and over again, right? My stance is clear. There's no point in calling them out. They aren't listening, and in general, calling them out is far more likely to generate more harm than any growth. So unless you love yourself some conflict and rage, and some of you may enjoy that, then calling them out is never a good idea. In fact, calling them out only just gives you more confirmation of how unhealthy these relationship cycles are, and may be so triggering that it is simply not good for your health. So let's start at the top. Here's a first thing alternative to calling out a narcissist. Don't call them out. It's really that simple. Do not call them out. It would save you a world of grief and hurt if you did not. You aren't turning to them for confirmation. They aren't going to change, so don't do it. If you suspect that narcissistic patterns are in play in your relationships, then you simply have bigger decisions to make. Put your time there. Ask yourself, do I stay and set boundaries and not engage? If I leave, what does that look like? But some grand showdown of telling them, there's no win there, and that's not a good idea. A second alternative, put your energy into actually really understanding what this pattern is about, not in calling them out. An issue that often arises is that people read books or blogs or watch videos on channels such as this, and then will find themselves saying, aha, now I get it. Just like maybe that magic moment when somebody finally sort of masters algebra or how to play the violin. And then you want to take that newfound knowledge and want to march over to that narcissist and say, aha, I have your number. I see you. Instead, it's far better for you to just simply focus on understanding the pattern, and then you can use that information to guide your decision making, not just in this relationship, but in others, and turn what felt like chaos into a predictable, albeit still painful situation, and make more informed choices. Your third alternative is gray rock. It's a thing, and it works. Gray rocking is a form of disengagement, not taking their bait, not having the usual invalidating conversations, not sharing your achievements with them so they can minimize them, not sharing your pain with them so they can diminish you further by not having any empathy, just sticking to superficial topics such as the weather or the new purple flowers in the neighbor's garden. No, I get it. When you gray rock, it's not a deep relationship, but the fact is it never was. And the gray rocking, they have a little ramp up at the beginning when you do it, but then over time it may help with the rage. Gray rocking means that you don't go deep. Someone recently suggested to me the idea of another level, sort of level up from gray rocking. She suggested calling it firewalling. She's a tech person. And we sort of laid out firewalling as, again, this level up from gray rocking. The concept of firewalling, not letting important or sensitive information in or out, but otherwise interacting normally. It's like a boundary that keeps your most intimate knowledge within you, but you can share other information safely. Fourth alternative is have some other sounding boards or sources of support. This can be therapy, close friends who get it, those friends of yours who sneer and say, you shouldn't say narcissist, that's not nice, you're not a doctor. Put them in the firewall pile. You can't have this conversation with them. You can turn to online support groups that are well run or other social groups where you can just be you. Having those spaces can be game changers for you and make it less likely that you make the mistake of calling out the narcissist and instead just vent in a space where you are safe and validated. Fifth is radical acceptance. Radical acceptance means knowing that this won't change. This or these are the limits of this relationship and this person. And it also means knowing that calling this out is pointless. This falls in, radical acceptance falls in with the many other techniques I have shared, including managing realistic expectations, setting boundaries, not defending, not engaging, not explaining, and not personalizing. But as part of this, it's also recognizing via radical acceptance that calling this out, calling a narcissist out, is pointless and potentially harmful. And sixth is distraction. Do something else. You feel like calling them out? I don't care if you go and pick up some yarn and start to crochet, write the great American novel, take a walk, bake a cake, go to the garden, or binge watch a show for the 10th time. Do something else. And the moment you want to call them out, that feeling, it may pass. I gotta say, watching a show or a movie is particularly useful because it can sometimes change your disposition or your perspective depending on what the show is about. And just that little change in focus and perspective may pull you back from wanting to do it and sort of letting that desire to call them out pass. I'm going to say this for the third time in this series. All of you are as free to do as you wish. We have that option. And to know that all choices carry a responsibility. If their ragey word salad mess is a price of admission to speak your truth, then you do you. You do what feels right. But you go in thinking, if you do go in thinking there could be real change and real contrition from them, then don't do it. And keep in mind that there are other people who get affected by their rage. Children, co-workers, other observers. So please be mindful of those impacts before you start calling them out and their rage overtakes everyone. For those of you with traumatic histories, narcissistic rage is not only triggering, it's destabilizing. It can result in setbacks in functioning and in ramp-ups in other mental health symptoms. The narcissist is going to remain a one-person wrecking crew. Please protect yourself, as their rage and their manipulation can literally make you sick, both mentally and physically. And not calling them out is not enabling. A lot of people say, if I don't call them out, then I'm part of the problem. They're already enabled. And you calling them out in a strange way enables them more, because it means they can just go on yet another one of their ragers that they use to release tension. They aren't going to change. And more meaningful consequences that may range from legal, criminal, financial, employment, or social penalties or remedies are probably not going to happen on your watch. Consequences that could result in a loss of their power, their privilege, their resource, and their social standing are typically all that will ever get through to them. And it very rarely happens in this world. The world enables them. Our laws enable them. It's not just you. In narcissistic relationships, we strive. We have to strive for our own self-preservation and protection. And we need to try to heed those red flags early and often. So there are alternatives to calling them out. There's no point. It is a pointless endeavor. These are 6 things you can do instead. Keep them at ready access and recognize that at those times you want to say, do you recognize what a raging narcissist you are? I don't know. Go turn on that Netflix. So let's talk a little bit about this concept of soul distancing. In a time, as we're making this video, we were talking about other kinds of distancing, sort of traditional social distancing, keeping 6 feet away from people as a way to sort of ease the spread of the virus and to keep more of us healthy for a longer period of time so we don't overwhelm the health industry. We understand what that's about. We understand why we need to do that. But here's where it gets sticky. A lot of people are reaching out to me, and I'm getting unprecedented numbers of emails and messages about this issue of, listen, I did all the work I was supposed to do. I set the boundaries. In some cases, they went no contact. In some cases, they went gray rock. They created very robust lives outside of the household, career, school, you name it. All the things they needed to do social support networks to be able to help them cope with the narcissist in their lives. Here's where things changed. In many, many, many parts of the world, I live in one of them right now, what we're having to deal with is a sort of a stay-at-home order where we can't leave our homes easily. So the challenge in this then becomes, what do? You no longer can't just walk out of the house. Yeah, I guess you could take a walk, but in some parts of the world you can't even do that. So how do you manage this era and what's happening while staying healthy? Now here's what's interesting. This concept is something I started talking about long before any of this happened, and it was often related to things like family dinners and holidays and vacations and things that you were sort of put into tight proximity, like a holiday dinner or a festival dinner where you were thrust in close proximity to some of your more toxic and narcissistic family members or partners or anything like that. The challenge then becomes, many times people say, hey, listen, there's parts of my family I really do love. I love some of my siblings, or I love one of my parents, or I'm fond of my grandparents. And I'm not willing to completely divorce myself from that system because these people are meaningful to me, which I think is wonderful. So the question is, how do you distance from someone when physically you have to occupy the same space? That's where the concept of something I've always called soul distancing comes into play. When you're with someone and your physical, material body is in their presence, that's fine. You know, that happens. You have to sit next to people you don't like on buses and airplanes or in offices or in classrooms. It happens all the time. But when those people have no relevance to you, for example, you're sitting next to someone on a bus or you're sitting next to someone in a conference room, you don't really pay much mind to them. You might think like, I'll be glad when this is done. I don't really like this person, or they're doing things that are making me uncomfortable, or I just don't like this experience. You know, it's either time limited or you don't have much association with them. It's a whole different game when you have to be in proximity to someone who's been a toxic influence in your life, someone who's invalidated you, someone who's demeaned you, someone who's devalued you, or someone who's manipulated you, and that's been directly targeted at you. That's a very uncomfortable space to occupy. And that's not just in your close, intimate relationships. Again, that could be your family, it could be a friend, it could even be the workplace. We don't all have the luxury to step away from these relationships and spaces now more than ever, right? So what do? Your physical body stays in, but you can pull that most sacred part of yourself out of there, your soul. Don't have it present there for them to be able to play with. Pull yourself away in that. It's almost like classical gray rock. Really what gray rocking is a form of soul distancing. What you do in gray rock is you don't let them interact with the best of you. You're very serene. You're very neutral and flat. There's a lot of, okay, sure, sounds good. That's interesting. Enough filler to keep the conversation going. But what you don't put up on the chopping block are those most authentic, important, divine, and sometimes vulnerable parts of yourself. At this particularly vulnerable time in our world, people are scared. They're scared about a lot of things. They're scared about elderly friends and relatives. They're scared about their livelihoods. They're scared about getting sick themselves. They're scared about the unknowns. Those are normal reactions in an abnormal situation. What can be very unsettling, though, is when you have those fears, and because you're stuck in sort of a narcissistic space because you're locked in with people like that, you don't feel like you have places you can share that. The temptation is, oh, these are spectacular circumstances. I should be able to share this about myself. And then you're shut down, mocked, or gaslighted. Soul distancing means that you're not going to share those vulnerabilities. You're not going to share those aspects of yourself. You need places to share those things. And those may be friends by, I don't know, by FaceTime or Skype or Zoom or some other video chat. It could be texts. It could be if you're doing online therapy, talking to your therapist. Those are all very good and appropriate ways to do it. Just don't bring it to the people who are going to mock you. And listen, what's going on in the world isn't the only game in town. We all have other stuff going on. Many people are still going to school online. They may be doing their jobs online. They may be trying to find work online. People have been let go. They're trying to get their finances in order. There's other stuff going on. And in the midst of that, you may also feel vulnerable. You may say, oh, I'm worried I won't graduate in time. Or I'm afraid that, oh, my boss isn't noticing my work in the same way. Or you're worried that you're not going to be able to find new work, and in a few months or even right away, you're not going to be able to do things like pay rent, and you're not sure how all these new things are working. There's a lot to figure out, right? So in those vulnerabilities, you once again, around the narcissists in your life, you don't get to share them. Soul distancing becomes a way to make sure you don't take those things to them, that you really keep those vulnerabilities. And it's not just about what's going wrong, it's also about what's going right. What's been striking to me as we've gone through this entire, unbelievable human experience of all feeling vulnerable about something that's tiny as a virus, but it's causing so much havoc in everyone's lives, is how people have drawn together. I've really, really been struck by how people are attempting to reach out to their neighbors, to their friends, to their families, to do the right things in their communities. If they didn't lose their work, trying to find ways to help financially support other people, creating works of art, continuing to sing their songs and giving sort of these kind of quick pop-up concerts online, whatever it is. I really am amazed at seeing people who are playing by the rules and really trying to do good things for other people, keeping their local bakery in business by going, socially distancing, buying that loaf of bread, sometimes even when they don't need it, because they want that place to still be there when all of this is over. But when you try to even share those beautiful things with your family, like, can we draw together? Let's help the person down the street. Why don't we find a way to give back to our community safely? You'll also be met with, oh, please, they're not our problem. We got enough problems. Once again, that beautiful part of yourself can be denied. Soul distancing means you also don't bring those good things to them. You share them with the places they belong. It might be on your social media, it may be with friends, it may be simply just doing it. Long after all of what's happening now is gone, the soul distancing is going to still work for you, because a lot of people all over the world don't have the luxury of stepping away from their narcissistic relationships. It's so easy to say, go no contact, it's so easy. You can't go no contact when you're co-parenting. You can't go no contact in many cultures when you have interdependent family networks. You can't go no contact when you need to keep a job, especially nowadays, right? It's not a luxury all of us have to just, let's just go no contact. Soul distancing is a way to do a different kind of no contact. Because what happens then is that part of you, that again, divine part of you, there's no other way I can say it, is that divine soul part of you is not even out there for the narcissist to touch. It becomes an intentional action. You almost need to go into it saying, okay, I can almost visualize that part. I can almost visualize my soul, that part of myself, I'm sort of going to put it away. And then I'm going to interact with the narcissist. I'm going to kind of use a gray rock approach, and then find those spaces where you can do that kind of sharing. When we're vulnerable, when we're fatigued, when we're stressed, and when we're anxious, those are the times we often make, the mistake or the lapse or the slip, if you will, of bringing those vulnerable things to the toxic and narcissistic people in our lives. And at this unique time of sort of being locked down, we may be in close proximity to them, and they may honestly feel like the only game in town, like they're the only people we can talk to. They're not. You've got to view soul distancing as an incredibly powerful tool for advocating for yourself and protecting yourself without creating conflict. It's very much an action that you engage in. Now, as often happens with things like gray rock and no contact and just not engaging, narcissistic and toxic people don't like that. They don't like that you're not giving them something to punch at and have conflict with and be angry about. And they love engagement because it becomes one more place to gaslight or manipulate you. So initially, they're not going to like that. They're going to want to draw that part of you out, and they're pretty masterful at it. For you, the intentional, focused work is about, I'm not taking my soul out right now. I'm going to keep it here, secreted, because those who are worthy of seeing it and its beauty will get to see it in all its glory. This person hasn't earned that right because they haven't respected it in the past. By making it a very intentional act, it allows you to even be in close proximity to someone who isn't able to be with that really wonderful, vulnerable, honest, authentic part of you. You hold that back. And you still may be able to sit and talk with them about the weather, listening to their meanderings and ramblings and conspiracy theories and whatever talk they're engaging in that day. But again, you can go to that very mindful, centered space, protect you, and not hand over the best part of yourself. Like I said, long after all of this is over, soul distancing, which in many ways is a variation on sort of gray rock or no contact, but it goes beyond that. It's an awareness. It's an awareness that there's this piece of you that's very much you, that is your authentic good piece of you. Don't hand that away. If you do it enough and you keep having that vulnerable, beautiful internal space in you, that spiritual space in you, if you want to view it that way, if you keep letting that get trashed, it impacts you in numerous psychological ways. Versus if you're aware that that piece of you is very much you, and that you've given yourself the right to keep it held back, only sharing it with those who are deserving of being in the presence of your soul. Listen, the soul is a very philosophical concept, and even as sort of a traditionally scientifically trained psychologist, we didn't do a lot of soul talk in grad school, or even as we went through our training. But I must say that it's the psyche doesn't quite capture it. It's that part of us that doesn't conform to something we get. It's the us. It's the identity meets our divinity, meets our spirituality, meets our authenticity. But that part of us includes everything from our childhood vulnerabilities to our creative interests to the things we want to be and the things we hope to be. And a lot of people are letting those thoughts go through them right now and say, this is a wake-up call. How do I pursue those things? Don't have that conversation with the narcissist. Soul distancing means that I got all this beautiful stuff in me, and for the first time, I'm going to give myself permission to only share it with the people who get it. How do you handle flying monkeys? Now, this is a question that more than a few people have sent in and asked me about. And it's interesting, I thought about and developed this video during the holidays, a time when I know many people are thrown back together with family members that they have attempted to manage and distance from, and now, because of the forced gaiety of the holidays, I have to see them. I also know that people have run into flying monkeys in the workplace, on social media, and in friendships. Before I get on how to handle them, I just want to give you a reminder, the healing program, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, starting in January. Just go to the video notes, hit that link. You'll get on our email list to get the rest of the information to register. So how do you handle flying monkeys? We can make this a short video and just say disengage and be done with it. But the challenge is that it's not that easy. And sometimes the flying monkeys in your life, they're not as toxic as the original narcissist. So let's address ways for managing the flying monkeys that are inevitably a part of your life if you have a narcissist in your life. Let's start by breaking down what flying monkeys are. They are typically enablers, but they can also be people who are ignorant about narcissistic patterns and do not see it, and they're like clay in the narcissistic person's hands who can manipulate them with ease. Flying monkeys are typically people who were one time, or may still be, connected to both you and the narcissist. These could be family members, friends, co-workers, neighbors. The narcissistic person will mobilize the flying monkeys, typically at times when things aren't going well between you and the narcissist. Maybe it's a close relationship that's unraveling, a contentious family relationship, a difficult workplace situation, or a friendship that's falling apart. Because the narcissistic person is always looking for a way to create advantage for themselves, and they want to maintain a narrative that deflects any blame and responsibility from them and place it on someone else, and they have to end up looking wonderful in everybody else's eyes, right? Mobilizing the flying monkeys is a way for them to achieve all three of those things and put the blame on you. Now, that means that there are people around you, around all of us, that can be mobilized into that role of flying monkey. One of the most painful parts of flying monkeys is that these are people, they're often people, who you may have considered to be friends or trusted family or just good people in your life. Unfortunately, because narcissistic people are so skilled at wearing a mask, they may have tricked these people, and there are so many people out there who don't want to believe that there can be the darkness of narcissism in our midst. And any of us who have been through narcissistic abuse and really get it, I think we're regularly shocked at how few people out in the world at large do get it. Now, flying monkeys are people who are often vulnerable and recruitable, and the manipulations of the narcissist are no match for their rosy-eyed or naive vision of the world. Flying monkeys, like I said, can be enablers and often want to maintain a sort of pretty and simple view of the world. And who can blame them? I wish the world was simpler than the view of it that I've got these days. But that makes the flying monkeys vulnerable to a twisted narrative, and also one where the narcissistic person beautifully is able to paint themselves as a victim. Now, just like the original flying monkeys in The Wizard of Oz, they're a flock. They're almost like a flock of birds. They mob and come at you as a group, which leaves you feeling even more gaslighted because it seems like an entire group of people are on the same page in a way that is completely at odds with your reality and siding with the narcissist. This can be devastating if it is a family and you actually believe that some of these family members had your back, or you've had their back and been there for them in the past. Or it could be a long-standing group of friends whom you have known for years. In fact, you might have been friends with them even before the narcissist became friends with them. Or colleagues that you have supported for years. It's a betrayal. And because it's a betrayal at such a large scale, it is overwhelming and unsettling. So, to the original concept of this video, how are you supposed to protect yourself when it comes to flying monkeys? Sadly, there isn't much that you can do from a prevention standpoint. It's an exhausting life to have to continually monitor your life and wonder, is that person going to become a flying monkey? Is that person going to become a flying monkey? It's no way to live. In some ways, all you can do is go through your life as your best you. And if the people around you don't seem to understand narcissism, be careful around them because they are the ones that will be the most recruitable as flying monkeys. It's really where we can address the flying monkeys is what you do as it's happening or after it happens. Number one, you gotta hold on to your reality. It's very easy to be gaslighted and start to doubt yourself and feel deeply confused when lots of people are sharing the same distorted narrative. Trust yourself. There can be so much grief when you're experiencing the whole flying monkey phenomenon, and that grief can drain you and sometimes leave you doubting yourself even more. You know you. You know what you experienced. And even if the flying monkeys want to gaslight you alongside the narcissist, you gotta hold on to your reality. Number two, don't try to convert the flying monkeys. The group of flying monkeys with the narcissist leading the fray can feel a little bit culty. And sometimes the flying monkeys can get really zealous about their support of the narcissist and the idea that you may be to blame. All you can do is calmly and gracefully stand in your truth, even if you're so angry inside. Don't get into the mud with them. They will want to hear your side of things, and if you choose to do that, stick to the behaviors of the narcissist and don't get lost in talking about gaslighting and narcissism and other words that might put them on the defensive. Because when you use those words with flying monkeys, they'll often push back and try to paint you as the bad person. Number three, keep in mind that sometimes flying monkeys come back around. Before you welcome them back with open arms, pay attention to who they were. And don't forget what they were willing to do. Flying monkeys may come around for a variety of reasons. They may get burned by the narcissist, or see them more clearly, or see that you aren't reacting to them. It doesn't mean you have to give up on the friendship or the relationship with the flying monkey, but you may want to proceed with more firm boundaries and be armed with the recognition that this person that was a friend that became a flying monkey, that they were able to do that to you. One of the hallmarks of survival from narcissistic abuse is to move cautiously and slowly, but it's important that you learn to not justify and to not get lost in the cognitive dissonance swamp. Sadly, going forward, it may feel like a friendship or relationship with this former flying monkey that's less deep. Again, a key mantra of narcissistic abuse survivorship is to protect yourself on the basis of the wisdom of the lessons that you've learned from the narcissistic relationship. And that means caution and boundaries. Number 4, not all flying monkeys are created the same. Some are trying to play both sides, being your friend and the narcissistic person's friend. Tread very lightly there. You do not want to be a source of intel for the narcissist with a flying monkey telling them what's going on. So keep your answers and thoughts terse and brief, and don't show your hand to the flying monkeys. Some flying monkeys are as bad as the narcissist and want to jump on the bandwagon of harming you. In that case, do not engage. Some flying monkeys are just stupid, almost like the dim-witted kid in high school who just wanted to be friends with the cool kids no matter what. And sadly, in adult life, the narcissist often is the cool kid. The stupid flying monkeys aren't always dangerous, but they are definitely not a great person for you. You can do better. Number 5, hard as it may be, build new sources of support. There's nothing like a band of flying monkeys coming at you to be the wake-up call that you need to switch up your game and find some new people. This may start in places like therapy, but lead you to cultivate friendships with folks who are separate from the narcissist and don't know them. And make sure you do have a safe space like therapy to talk about this, because the betrayal, grief, and confusion of a flying monkey attack can be overwhelming. Flying monkeys are a deeply painful situation, and flying monkey situations have destroyed families, ended friendships, and even harmed careers, and all of that on top of having to weather the narcissistic abuse. Many times people will tell you when you talk about this idea of flying monkeys, it's all in your head. Remember, it's a real phenomenon, so just hold on to your reality and watch your head and your back. And if any of you have some suggestions on how to manage flying monkeys that you've used that have worked for you, please drop them in the comments. I've only offered up 5, but you may have techniques that I haven't thought of. So here's a proverb for you to try. If you heal the leg of a person, do not be surprised if they use it to run away. I want you to think for a minute and apply that to narcissism. So welcome back to the never-ending proverb series. I'm really enjoying thinking about this series now. Have really been focusing, as you can see, a lot on what are traditionally African proverbs. So much wisdom in these proverbs that seem to understand narcissism so well. So this particular proverb, if you heal the leg of a person, do not be surprised if they use it to run away. Let's take this one apart. I think some of you are already like, yeah, I'm on this one. So this is, as I said, it's an African proverb. So many of these are just so spot on. I'm struck as I've been reading so many of them recently, like, wow, these are so wise. They're often quite difficult to source to an individual, sometimes even to a country, but they're very on point. I almost find myself sort of a collector of these African proverbs at this point. And this particular proverb, it's the heartbreak of so many people who get into narcissistically abusive relationships. This idea, if you heal the leg of a person, don't be surprised if they run away. Now, as you know, I have talked repeatedly about the toxic fairy tale of the empath and the narcissist, and what happens when very empathic people and very narcissistic people get together. Basically, as too many of you know from firsthand experience, the empathic person exhausts themselves in their ill-fated attempts to love, rescue, enable, and help the narcissist. Everyone is given a bunch of bad advice as we grow up and a bunch of ridiculous fairy tales on love stories and how love stories are about rescuing someone and the happily ever after. And after, you know, all of you know that these rescue love stories are basically a crock of you-know-what. But this kind of thinking, rescuing and love stories, has gotten so many people into terrible situations in which they really try to help the narcissistic person in their life. They listen to the narcissistic person's victimized rants. They give them endless supply. They learn to stop talking about themselves. They support the narcissistic person in their dreams. They give the narcissistic people second chances, third chances, 150th chances. And they always, always give the narcissistic folks the benefit of the doubt, all in this grand fantasy of rescuing them. But after you do all of that, one day, in many cases, the narcissistic person will either cheat or leave or end the relationship. And as much as I warn people about the harms of narcissism, I'm the first to acknowledge that a narcissistic person doesn't end up with this personality style out of nowhere, right? It's not like it's bad luck. Well, I guess it kind of is bad luck because many narcissistic people have really rough backstories. They did sometimes experience difficult childhoods that were characterized by anything from trauma to neglect to having one or two narcissistic parents to being subjected to lots of inconsistency. And it's believed that narcissism as a personality style really reflects an anxious and avoidant attachment style, which is not an easy way to live. None of it's easy. Sometimes narcissistic people didn't have all of that. Instead, they were just really spoiled, really overindulged as children, never were taught limits, or they were just the overindulged golden child, and they get really good in adulthood at shaping their story in a way that will manipulate other people and get them what they want. Now, keeping all of that in mind, it can be hard because a lot of people feel like, oh, I have to rescue this person. Now, this rescuing narrative tends to happen more often with the vulnerable narcissists. This is the type of narcissism that's characterized by lots of anxiety and sadness at times, social awkwardness, lots of neediness, lots of grievances, sullen victimhood, resentment, being pouty, being quietly rageful, being vindictive. These are folks who, unlike the grandiose narcissistic types or even the malignant narcissistic types, they tend to be more introverted and socially anxious. And as a result, they do not initially come off as charming or charismatic or confident, but rather a vulnerable narcissist will often initially come off as quiet, perhaps even shy, and definitely not as sort of in-your-face attention-seeking. In the early days of any relationship with a vulnerable narcissistic person, they may quite often share sort of tales of woe, belief of how everyone has let them down, their parents, life, everyone they ever went to school with or ever knew, every teacher they ever had. They believe that no one sees their excellence, that they never got a lucky break. Now, if you fall for all of this sort of vulnerable narcissistic polemic or vulnerable narcissistic rant, it can be very tempting to want to rescue them, to want to save them. Vulnerable narcissistic people can almost turn into a sort of project for the empathic people who come into their lives. You may do everything from listen to them for endless hours, loan them your car, introduce them to someone who can help them get a job, loan them money, help them with their resume, tell them how great they are, offer to let them move in so they aren't sofa surfing. In essence, you try to rescue them. You try to right all of the wrongs that they tell you have happened in their life. And in many cases, not all, but many, once you give the narcissist sort of back their legs, as it were, they do finally get the job or a steady salary or whatever it is they needed. They may end up being done with you. I have seen it happen so many times. This isn't going to be that great love story in which the sullen, victimized person turns to you and thanks you for all you've done and then becomes bright and cheery, perhaps become the sort of prince or princess, charming, and it's all happily ever after. That's Beauty and the Beast. That ain't real life. No, narcissism is a very parasitic style. And after kind of getting back on their feet, may even feel that they can do better than you, which is a terrible thing to have thrown at you since you are the one who got them to this point. But they believe it, and they may trade on this new persona that you helped them create and take that and move on to what they believe are greener pastures. And when this happens, it can hurt. It can really, really hurt and play on all of those wounds, those core wounds like, I'm not good enough. At that point, after you healed their leg and they run away, it is easy to fall into self-blame, self-anger, and a sense that somehow you're the one who's foolish. No, you didn't do anything wrong. You were human. You were kind. And it becomes a painful but real life lesson that when dealing with narcissism, and I gotta tell you, a lot of these African proverbs understand narcissism better than most shrinks understand narcissism today. That once you heal whatever they were bothered by, whatever they thought they need when you met them, when you heal that proverbial leg for them, they are more likely to use that so-called healed leg to run away from you. Now, when a person is left, by a narcissist, when a narcissist leaves the relationship, it's easy to fall into the distorted and flawed thinking that the narcissistic person, that they're going to change for the next person, or it's easy to fall into the belief that of I am not enough. And that's why they left. Or now that they changed, they wanted something better than me. They haven't changed. They didn't change with you. They're not going to change for the next person. They're not going to change for the person after that. You know why? Because they can't. You are more than enough. And they didn't change, and they're not going to change. For narcissistic people, all relationships are transactional. And the transaction largely benefits them. In their heads, if they were actually in touch with themselves, honestly, what they view it as is, hey, I was in a relationship with you, and that makes you lucky because you got to be with me, and you did stuff for me. Well, yeah, you did stuff for me because I deserve it. And guess what? You got to be in a relationship with me, and aren't you lucky? That's actually what goes through their little entitled brains. And then they'll say, and no, I'm kind of done with you because I got what I needed, so bye. It hurts. And because of this transactional nature of these relationships, there are lots of people who get into relationships with narcissists and who help the narcissist sort of heal. And by heal, I don't mean that you're getting them better. You're healing them from their narcissism. I mean that you take care of what they need. You take care of what they feel entitled to. You may pay bills or solve problems or make them look good to other people. And then you watch them walk away because the narcissistic person got what they wanted from that transaction with you. And now they're done because they're done with the transaction. They aren't thinking about you when they leave because they don't care. And your rumination is about what you could have done to have kept them in the relationship, right? You keep ruminating, what could I have done? Maybe I could have been more, maybe I could have been different. There is nothing more you could have done. You already did enough. In fact, I'd argue, you probably did too much. The entitlement of narcissism is that they do expect other people to do what they need, even to sort of fix them, and then the narcissist can waltz off into the sunset on that leg you helped them heal. Adult relationships, no adult relationships they're not about fixing, they're not about rescuing, at least they shouldn't be. Healthy relationships are about balance and respect and mutual regard and compassion. If during all of that you support each other and sometimes help each other solve problems, then that's great. That's wonderful. That can happen, and that will happen in a healthy relationship. But nobody should believe that the only way to win someone over is if you fix their life. So, this proverb, if you heal the leg of a person, do not be surprised if they use it to run away, actually really applies to many narcissistic relationships where people felt they did so much for the narcissistic person, and the narcissistic person took it and walked. The best I can leave you with is stop trying to fix them. It can't be done. It can't be done by me. It can't be done by you. It can't be done. And the fact of the matter is, rescuing and fixing, that's not what love is. Hope that gives you some clarity. Thanks again. 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 Clarity.